Britain is spending more money on public services than ever before. The NHS budget is larger than it was a decade ago. Education spending remains substantial. Police funding is increasing. Government spending overall is at near historic heights. Our welfare budget is bigger than our income tax take. Yet waiting lists remain high. GP appointments are harder to obtain, and when you do, they last 5 minutes. Local councils are struggling financially. Criminal court backlogs persist. Infrastructure projects, I was going to say frequently, but normally run over budget. So if taxpayers are spending more money than ever, why does it often feel like we're getting less in return? Maybe something deeper is happening inside Britain's public sector. At first glance, it seems straightforward. Public services cost more because inflation, so costs rise. Healthcare technology is becoming more expensive. Staff salaries rise. Energy costs increase. Buildings require maintenance, but they always did. These explain part of the story. But the reality is Britain faces a paradox. Public spending has generally increased over the long term, yet public satisfaction seems to have declined at almost the same rate. It creates a political argument that dominates modern debate. The left typically argue that public services remain underfunded relative to demand. The right argue the problem's not simply money but efficiency, incentives and institutional performance. Well, quite probably both of these are true. The challenge is understanding which factors actually matter most. Well, one of the big problems is that Britain's population is getting older, and older populations require more healthcare and more social care, and they consume more public resources. And it's probably not a surprise to understand that they consume more than they give, because they've given their tax in the past, right? On that promise that they'll have money when they get to retirement. And citizens expect better cancer treatments, more advanced diagnostics, safer infrastructure, higher educational standards, improved policing. How's that one going? Many services are victims of their own success. When people live longer because of good health care, they end up needing more treatments, and ongoing treatments, and complicated treatments because of comorbidities. So NHS funding has increased substantially over a long period of time, yet waiting lists and access problems remain stubborn problems. Maybe part of the problem is that public services operate differently to, in air quotes, a real business. There's no competitor waiting to make market share. There's no profit signal indicating whether resources could be used more efficiently. So long as someone doesn't wait longer than the tick list amount in A&E, everyone's done their job. So just move them out of A&E to another department. Crisis averted. Economists have an idea of Baumol's cost disease. Many labour-intensive services become more expensive over time because productivity improvements are harder to achieve than in, say, manufacturing or technology. A factory can automate a production process. A nurse still spends the same time with patients. A teacher still teaches a set number of pupils. A police officer still investigates crimes, and they need to go and look for new crimes and non-crimes. So they're very busy. This explains why costs rise. But every failure creates new rules. Every scandal creates compliance requirements. Every audit generates reporting obligations. And most of these, they came in for understandable reasons. Political accountability, citizen transparency, managers having consistency. But the problem's cumulative, and over time, organisations become increasingly focused on process, not outcomes. Well, process explains the cost, and lack of outcomes supports the poor delivery. We've talked about quangos here before, and quangos fragment responsibility. But they also fragment responsibility for poor decisions. And with decision making being dispersed, not only does accountability become blurred, but accountability for the efficiency of your spending does. Britain's wider economy has struggled with weak productivity growth, and public services have faced similar challenges, maybe worse. Well, digital technologies offer opportunities. Administrative simplification would offer opportunities. Better procurement offers opportunities. Data-driven decision-making would offer greater opportunities. Problem is reform encounters resistance. And I don't mean the next government. So what does need to be done? Well, government should focus on outcomes, not spending announcements. Citizens need to care about both results and budgets. Every process should better justify its existence. Accountability should be clearer. There should be less quangos muddying the water. Automation should be embraced when it adds value, not just because it cuts staff headcount. Productivity should become a central performance measure across public services. And reform needs to recognise that institutions matter. Effectively, public services depend not only on funding, but on organisational design, incentives and management quality. So there isn't an easy answer, but there is an obvious problem. If spending continues rising faster than outcomes, the question that obviously comes to mind is, are we paying for better services or simply a more expensive system?